The primal true dragon was definitely at the top of the food chain, and there were truly only a handful in this world that could suppress it. Ordinary demons like Oxy wouldn't dare to go against a primal true dragon, but it just happened to have encountered Snowy. Snowy just happened to be one of those few existences that could suppress it. Snowy didn't really cut it open, she was just scaring it. But she hadn't expected it to be unable to endure such a thing and fall unconscious. This made Snowy feel quite bored, so she tossed it aside. She didn't know what it was. All she did know was that it seemed not bad. That was all. Xianxia didn't hesitate to swallow the dragon ball. As soon as it entered his stomach, a strand of pure energy immediately dispersed throughout him. Bang! An invisible wave of pressure swept out from Xianxia. Dragon pressure. Xianxia was quite shocked because it was truly too terrifying. He hurriedly sat down cross-legged and started absorbing it. Meanwhile, the eternal energy within Xianxia started to circulate. Devouring. The eternal energy had actually started to devour the energy from the Dragon Ball, but it didn't absorb much, so it didn't really affect Xianxia. Snowy gazed at Xianxia for a long time, and a short while later, she grew quite bored. So, she took out the 2 dragon horns, played with them for a while, and then placed them on her head. Sword Scroll's eyelids twitched from the sight of this. Snowy felt that it didn't really work, so she removed them. After that, she seemed to have thought of something and summoned Oxy. Once Oxy appeared, it glanced at the primal true dragon, that was still feigning unconsciousness with slight fear. Snowy didn't fear that little fellow, but Oxy was terrified of it. Snowy took the horns and placed them on Oxy's head, and they really looked quite suitable. Sword Scroll suddenly said, "Silly cow. She's asking if you're willing to use those horns." Oxy may be stupid, but it knew what was what, so it immediately nodded. What a joke, the horns of a primal true dragon. If those horns belonged to it, then its horns would be comparable to divine treasures. True divine treasures. As for its combat strength, it would rise tremendously too. Moreover, once it obtained the horns of the primal true dragon, it would be able to sense the bloodline energy of the primal true dragon. In short, its benefits were immeasurable. Sword Scroll glanced at Snowy, and then she shook her head and sighed. She felt that the silly cow wasn't an idiot at all. Staying with Snowy and flattering Snowy on all occasions really did work out for it, and it had good luck because Snowy was such a generous little fellow. After all, she was just giving away a pair of primal dragon horns without the slightest hesitation. Oxy was absolutely lucky. Changing the horns. Sword Scroll did it herself and Oxy cooperated. So it didn't take long for Oxy to have a new pair of golden and shiny horns. As soon as its horns were changed, Oxy's aura instantly changed. It was like the difference between the heavens and the earth. Sword Scroll glanced at Oxy and nodded slightly. While Oxy was only at the True World realm now, its combat strength was absolutely capable of crushing ordinary True World realm experts, and it even had the strength to fight Limit Breaker realm experts. Arya sized up the dragon horns on Oxy's head, and then she kept touching it with a curious glow in her eyes. Sword Scroll glanced at Arya, hesitated for a while, and then pointed at the primal true dragon who was playing dead. "Arya, what do you think about it?" Arya gazed at the dragon and said, "A little snake?" As soon as it heard that, the primal true dragon opened its eyes and glared angrily at Wang Arya. Moreover, a strand of dragon pressure slammed down upon her. Oxy instinctively hid behind Snowy. Dragon pressure. It was pressure that came from its bloodline, and it was absolutely oppressive to demon beasts. However, Wang Arya showed no fear. She leaped over and kicked the dragon on its head. Bang! The dragon was kicked away and was dragged far away against the ground. Sword Scroll's expression changed from the sight of this. It was solemn. Unprecedentedly solemn. Snowy didn't defeat the primal true dragon, and that was understandable to her, very understandable. Moreover, it was very, very normal. However, even Wang Arya didn't fear it. How could she do that? There was only one explanation. Wang Arya's bloodline was superior to it. What demon beast's bloodline was superior to the primal true dragon? Sword Scroll couldn't figure it out, because amongst the primal demons she knew, The greatest among them could only rival the primal true dragon and match it evenly, but while she knew that existences that could crush it definitely existed, she didn't know what those existences were. Wang Area didn't stop there. She swiftly went over to it, and then grabbed it and started beating it up. Howls of sorrow instantly started resounding. Snowy blinked and couldn't really bear the sight of it. However, it had nothing to do with her, didn't it? Oxy's fists were trembling as it stood behind Snowy. It felt that it should be more respectful to Wang Area in the future. It wasn't difficult for it. After all, it felt that it was best to keep a low profile in Xianxia's group. Moreover, it was best to do all the dirty and tiring work. In short, it knew its place very well because it understood a principle. It was that it couldn't afford to offend anyone in this group. That was why Sword Scroll felt that Oxy was no fool. A short time later, Wang Area stopped. She produced a Tonghulu out of thin air and licked it, and then she seemed to have thought of something. She removed one of them and passed it to Snowy. The latter blinked and swept it up with her tongue and into her mouth. Sword Scroll glanced at the primal true dragon that was on the verge of death, and then she shook her head. She felt it really had absolutely bad luck. A short while later, Sword Scroll gazed at Wang Area. Area? Can you transform into your true form? Area blinked. Oh, I definitely can. However, I still haven't figured it out. I'll do it once I have. Sword Scroll felt speechless. Hiss! Suddenly, a strand of dark red flames appeared on Yang Yi, and it enveloped him. This sudden turn of events shocked Snowy, and she hurriedly gazed at Sword Scroll. The latter explained softly, "It's fine. It's the energy from the Dragon Ball that has been fully released. Now, how much he can absorb is up to him." Snowy nodded, and then she gazed at Yang Yi without any desire to move her gaze away. Sword Scroll glanced at Yang Yi, and then walked over to the primal true dragon. It was still playing dead and laid still on the ground. Sword Scroll squatted down and spoke softly. "Are you willing to go with us?" The dragon opened its eyes, glanced at Sword Scroll, and then immediately closed them again while shaking its head. What a joke! It just wanted to get away from that white little fellow and the young girl eating Tonghulu. They were absolutely terrifying. Sword Scroll grinned, and then she pointed at Snowy. "Actually, you want to go with her too, right?" The treasure-seeking mouse from before had been short-sighted and hadn't been able to discern Snowy's true form. However, what was the primal true dragon? Even if it was a young one, its instinct was enough to sense how special Snowy was. Sure enough, it glanced at Snowy and was slightly hesitant. It was hesitant because Snowy had wanted to hit it with the primordial axe of creation. Sword Scroll smiled. "She won't hit you if you are obedient. Look, this place is so boring. Coming with us will be fun." Fun. The dragon's eyes lit up. However, it seemed to have thought of something, and it glanced at the chair deep within this place. Sword Scroll glanced at it and said, "It's fine. We'll deal with that." She dragged the dragon over to Snowy, and Oxy immediately instinctively took 2 steps back to display its respect. But Oxy didn't know that its reaction made the primal true dragon feel much better. At this moment, it finally felt that it had some dignity. The dignity of a dragon. The dragon flew onto Oxy's shoulder and started conversing with Oxy. While it was conversing with Oxy, its gaze frequently glanced at Snowy and Wang Area. Snowy's attention was on Yang Yi, and she completely ignored the dragon. As for Area, only the Tonghulu had her attention. Sword Scroll grinned at the sight of this primal true dragon. Once it matured, it would be very, very terrifying. Sword Scroll glanced at the chair in the distance, and then she gazed at Yang Yi. "You better do well." At this moment, Yang Yi's body was completely red, but his aura was growing madly. Moreover, his body was transforming in stages as well. In the primordial pagoda, a group of women stood at the peak of a mountain. They were led by Su Qingshi, and the rest of them were Yang Yi's wives, including Bai Jixin. All of them had their gazes on Bai Jixin because she'd asked them to come together. She glanced at them and spoke solemnly. "I'm sure all of you aren't willing to continue being just pretty faces." They fell silent. Pretty faces? Who wanted to be just that? But what could they do? and Nanjing was the only one among them who could keep up with Yang Yi. No matter how they cultivated, they couldn't catch up to Yang Yi and Nanjing. They felt helpless, extremely helpless. Bai Zhixian glanced at them. In the end, she gazed at Xiao Yushi, Zhuang Weiran and Su Qingshi. They were the strongest among the others, and they were all at the progenitor realm. However, it was really not enough. Bai Zhixian fell silent for a long time before she said, "Your natural talent isn't bad, and you've been cleansed by primordial violet energy for many years. So, your physiques are much, much better than ordinary people. Your cultivations and strength are so weak because you don't have good cultivation techniques, and not because you aren't working hard." She tapped their foreheads, and a few rays of white light entered them. Bai Zhixian continued, "It's the Yin-Yang scroll, a cultivation technique of a prominent sect from the primal era. The grand Tao it contains isn't just mutual cultivation. We can cultivate it with him to help him grow stronger, and help ourselves grow stronger too." Mutual cultivation. They blushed a little as they viewed the cultivation technique. Bai Zhixian continued, "There is yin and yang in the world, and it encompassed all things. All things have two extremes, and the fusion of yin and yang brings perfection. Mutual cultivation is a fusion of yin and yang, and we're all husband and wife with him, so it's normal to do that anyway. Since it's enjoyable and helps with our cultivation, then why not?" Bai Zhixian couldn't help but blush a little at this point. Meanwhile, someone suddenly said, "Are we all doing it together?" The surroundings fell silent. Together. In the palace, Yang Ye's aura was growing increasingly stronger, and his body was starting to change color. Golden. His skin had turned golden. Snowy was stunned by this. In the end, she gazed at Sword Scroll. The latter gazed at Yang Yi for a long time before she said, "It's fine. He'll be all right soon." Actually, she wasn't very confident, because she'd never seen anyone eat the Dragon Ball of a primal true dragon. She only knew it was a very good source of energy, but even she didn't know what would happen after it was consumed. Snowy relaxed a little upon receiving an answer from Sword Scroll. Meanwhile, she seemed to have thought of something and gazed at the dragon on Oxy's shoulder. The dragon's figure immediately stiffened, and it instinctively moved backward. Snowy glanced at its stomach, and no one knew what she was thinking. However, the primal true dragon was almost terrified to the point of fainting. Sword Scroll smiled and entered the primordial pagoda. She went to the mountain where Su Qingshi and the others were gathered, and they gazed at her. All of them had great respect for her. Sword Scroll glanced at Xiao Yushi, Zhuang Weiran, and Bai Zhixian. "The three of you have the best talent. Qingshi barely passes as well. As for the rest, if I'm to be honest, if it wasn't for the primordial pagoda, all of you would have never been able to get this far." They remained silent. Sword Scroll continued, "However, primordial violet energy's effects have their limit. If you can't advance further, then if I'm being honest, Yang Yi will have no choice but to watch you die many years from now. I've looked through Bai Zhixian's technique, and I think it's very useful to all of you. It's useful to him too. The Yin-Yang sect was a great sect during the primal era, so if you cultivate their technique, then coupled with how special Yang Yi is, you'll be able to go much further." She gazed at Xiao Yushi and Zhuang Weiran at this point. "Your talents were wasted a little. Staying in the primordial pagoda is beneficial to you, but it's disadvantageous too, because you've lost any chance of obtaining any fortuitous encounters. A tiger raised at home may not have to worry about food and water, but it would never become a king of the forest." Zhuang Weiran glanced at her. "What should we do?" Sword Scroll smiled. "You can't leave because he won't be able to rest at ease, and based on your strength, you won't survive for long without his protection." She glanced at the surroundings and said, "This world is a new world, and there are endless possibilities here. You can build it up and make this world a paradise." Su Qingshi asked, "A paradise?" Sword Scroll nodded. "A paradise. This place has that mysterious cultivation room and primordial violet energy. If this isn't a paradise, then what is? In the eternal dimension, a paradise is something only the extraordinary organizations of that dimension possess. Moreover, This small world isn't just an ordinary paradise. A sprite progenitor resides here. While she hasn't truly evolved into a sprite progenitor, it's only a matter of time. Once that happens, even those paradises wouldn't be able to compare to this place. Meanwhile, Xianxia asked, Senior Sword Scroll, how do you think we should modify this place? Sword Scroll glanced at the surroundings and said, This place is truly blessed by the heavens. You came from the large universe, and all the sprites from there are here. Moreover, you have numerous small spirit veins. So, making this place a paradise is absolutely easy. I suggest that you establish a sect here, and when the time is right, you can start recruiting experts and demon beasts. Most people and demon beasts would be willing to join a place like this. Xianxia and the others exchanged glances, and all of them felt that it could work. Sword Scroll continued, Moreover, you don't have to spend too much time on this sect. While the Northern Sword Sect is gone, its buildings are still here. Just move them in here, and with the sword formations from before, they'll be perfect. She gazed into the distance and continued, It won't be long before this place will become a paradise on par with some of the paradises in the eternal dimension, and with this paradise, you'll be able to recruit numerous experts, especially demons. In any case, all of them will come in obediently with Snowy here. Wait! Sword Scroll grunted coldly at this point. Not just anyone or any demon will be allowed in here. We only accept the most monstrous geniuses, and the most stronger and rarest beasts. The others exchanged glances. Suddenly, Sword Scroll looked up and left the pagoda. In the palace, Xianxia's aura was growing stronger, and it was at a critical point. Boom! Finally, a terrifying aura swept out from within him, but it only took a moment for the aura to surge back into him like a receding tide. Xianxia opened his eyes. The ocean of blood in his eyes had vanished, and they were replaced by golden light. Xianxia stood up, stretched his body, and then the space around him instantly rippled. The true void realm. At this moment, he wasn't just at the true void realm in his cultivation, even his body was at the true void realm. Especially his body, it was absolutely not at the level of an ordinary true void realm expert. The Dragon Ball's energy had merged with his body, causing it to receive some characteristics of dragons. It could be said that his current body may be at the true void realm, but even demons at the World Lord realm may not have bodies stronger than his. For example, Oxy was definitely incapable of comparing with his body right now. Besides that, there was a form of pressure coming from him. Dragon pressure. Presently, he had an invisible strand of dragon pressure, and it was deterring to a certain extent against both people and demons. Especially demons. Of course, it definitely didn't work on Snowy. Not to mention the dragon pressure he possessed, even a real primal true dragon's pressure wouldn't affect Snowy at all. Snowy immediately pounced on Xianxia and rubbed her head against his chin. The primal true dragon blinked. At this moment, it felt that Snowy wasn't that terrifying. Oxy hesitated for a moment and pointed at Xianxia. Respect! Respect. After being in Snowy's group for so long, Oxy was very well aware of something, and it was that it could make anyone unhappy, even Snowy. However, never make Xianxia unhappy. Because if you made Snowy unhappy, she would forget it after giving you a beating, but if you made Xianxia unhappy, then Snowy would never forget it. She would give you a beating forever. The sword gourd was the best example. Even now, it was frequently beaten up by Snowy. Moreover, Xianxia wasn't that easy to offend. That fellow was more terrifying than Snowy when he was angry. Or it should be said that when Xianxia was angry, even Snowy would be obedient like a cat. The primal true dragon seemed to understand Oxy, and it glanced at Xianxia while in deep thought. Xianxia rubbed Snowy's head and closed his eyes slowly. This transformation wasn't just a transformation of his cultivation and body. His internal organs had undergone a transformation too. Could be said that it was a transformation from inside out. Something worth mentioning was that the eternal energy within him seemed to have grown a little larger, and it had started to come into contact with his primordial violet energy and profound primal energy. Or to be more precise, it was getting close to the primordial violet energy. His intuition told him that it didn't think much of his profound primal energy. In short, he'd obtained a comprehensive improvement. Now, he could easily swing his sword 3 times with the sword domain. Moreover, its might has improved by a level 2. If he gave it his all, he could even swing his sword 4 times. But it would be strenuous and harm him. Simply speaking, he was unmatched beneath the Limitbreaker realm. Meanwhile, Sword Scroll suddenly said, "You've taken so much, so it's time to meet the owner." Xianxia looked into the distance, and there was a chair there. He fell silent for a short while, and then he took Snowy in his arms and walked over there. He bowed slightly. "Please feel free to tell me if you need anything." As soon as he finished speaking, a middle-aged man appeared on the chair. He only had a body, but his arms and legs were missing. Moreover, even his eyes were missing. Xianxia frowned slightly and grew vigilant. Meanwhile, the man spoke abruptly. "In all these years, so many have come here, but you're the second to get here. The first was, right, let me think. Oh, right, it's that fellow who created the Northern Sword Sect up there. Unfortunately, that fellow is dead now." Xianxia's frown deepened when he heard this. Sword Scroll and him exchanged glances. They'd thought the sect master of the Northern Sword Sect had come from the Eternal Dimension, but now it seemed like they were wrong. The man continued, "That fellow's natural talent in the Sword Dao was really good. I asked him to keep a low profile and leave once he finished learning from me. Unfortunately, he wanted to start a sect once he finished learning. Now, all of them are dead, and they don't even have another life to experience." Xianxia glanced at the man and remained silent. Meanwhile, the man continued, "As for you, your natural talent is ordinary, but your heart toward the Sword Dao is much, much better than that fellow. You have potential. Moreover, your Sword Dao has emotions in it. While it has just taken form, it's really not bad. These fellows by your side are really interesting too. The primordial acts of creation and primordial pagoda may not be much, but they aren't bad for you. So just use them for now. As for this Sword Scroll, if you can find her main body, then she's barely passable. As for this ox, its primal bloodline is very scarce. Of course, even its ancestor, a true primal Heavenshaker ox, isn't much either. However, its fortune isn't bad, and if it can overcome its bloodline in the future, then it'll be barely passable." This little girl." The man suddenly stopped at this point. Arya blinked and was filled with curiosity. Meanwhile, the man continued, "You shouldn't be here. Of course, even I'm here, so it isn't surprising that you're here. We can be considered to be peers. As for the outcome, only the heavens knows." Snowy suddenly flew over to the middle-aged man and pointed at herself. The man fell silent for a short while and said, "A sprite progenitor. I recognize you, the progenitor of all sprites." Snowy blinked. She was asking him to continue. "Sigh." The man suddenly sighed softly. "If the sprite progenitors of the past find out that the current sprite progenitor is a little fellow who only knows how to be cute, I wonder if they'll get so angry that they detonate themselves." Snowy was stunned speechless. Snowy was visibly stunned. As for Xianxia and Sword Scroll, they were beyond shocked. Who was this man? The primordial acts of creation and the primordial pagoda weren't much to him? They were treasures that countless went mad to obtain. But they weren't much to him. Both Xianxia and Sword Scroll didn't think that he was exaggerating. It wasn't necessary. Moreover, the man didn't just possess eternal energy. He had a primal true dragon. A person like him would disdain to lie. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man continued, "Actually, I'm not very interested in all of you. If it wasn't for this little fellow, you wouldn't have gotten here. However, I'm a little interested in all of you now." Xianxia said, "Please be frank, senior." The man replied, "I've lived for very, very long. So long that even I've forgotten how long it has been. I don't think your arrival here is a coincidence. I don't care who set this all up, but if someone included me in their schemes, I have to do something." Suddenly, a pitch-black sword sheath appeared before Xianxia. It was over 1 m long, and it was very simple. It looked like an ordinary sword sheath. Xianxia gazed at the man but didn't take the sheath. He said, "According to what you've said, someone is controlling our lives? Or perhaps, someone is controlling everything." The man replied with a question, "Who isn't?" Xianxia frowned, and the man continued, "Shrink your concept of the world and take a look at it. Who do you think controls the destiny of the fish in a pond? Or look at it at a larger scale. Who controls the destiny of the commoners in a kingdom? How are you so sure that you're not one of the fish in the pond?" He paused for a moment at this point and continued, "The stronger you get, the stronger you'll sense some inconceivable existences. I'm sure you've heard of destiny. You're probably unable to come into contact with that level right now, but as you grow stronger, you'll realize that some things may be impossible to touch or see, but it doesn't mean they do not exist. Of course, nothing is absolute, and it may just be my mistake. However, it's not important, isn't it?" Xianxia glanced at the man and said, "You're overthinking it." "Huh." Xianxia closed his eyes slowly. "Why think so much about the future? What's most important is treading my current path well. As for destiny, I think I should just do my best and let the heavens decide. What do you think?" "Interesting." There was slight amusement in his voice. "Those words make you worthy of this sheath. As for whether you're worthy of its sword, it depends on whether your words were sincere." Xianxia glanced at the sheath and asked, "Where's its sword?" The man replied, "Look for it on your own." Xianxia was stunned speechless. The man continued, "Let me ask you something very common. Why do you cultivate the sword?" Xianxia replied, "It can kill and protect." "Ha ha!" The man suddenly roared with laughter. Sword Scroll pulled on Xianxia's sleeve. The latter nodded slightly and gazed at the man. "Senior, I'll be taking my leave now." He took Snowy in his arms, and then took Wang Aria's hand and walked toward the exit. Suddenly, the man's voice resounded from behind him. "Let me give you a piece of advice. A true heart leads to an invincible sword. A true heart leads to an invincible sword." Xianxia's figure stopped for a moment, and he said, "Thank you." As soon as he finished speaking, he left the palace with the others. Only the man remained here. The man suddenly started laughing, and as he laughed, 2 streams of tears seeped out from his eyes. The tears would not stop. In the past, a child and an old man once had a conversation like this. "Kid, why do you cultivate the sword?" "I can protect my father and mother." He hesitated for a moment and added, "And the girl I like." "All right, then from now onward I, Jian Wudi, take you as my disciple." Countless years later, the child wasn't a child anymore. He was one of the strongest people in the world. He arrived at the ends of the sky, and his eyes were filled with confidence. He was absolutely confident that he could enter the door which no one had ever succeeded at entering, because he was really very strong. He stopped, and a voice came from there. "Is the sword more important, or is your mother, father, and the girl you like who are more important?" The man's eyes narrowed slightly. "Are you trying to spoil my mental state?" The voice fell silent for a long time before it said, "Draw their appearance for me, and I'll let you through." The man was stunned. Their appearance? Their appearance? Mother and father's appearance? The appearance of my beloved Tao companion? The man was stunned on the spot, and then his hands and body started to tremble. His parents and beloved had died a long, long time ago. When had they died? How had they died? It had been too long to the point he'd forgotten. He'd even forgotten their appearances. The sword was the only thing in his world. However, he still remembered something, and it was that he'd abandoned everything for the sword, including everything he wanted to protect, because they had become burdens to his sword Tao. He severed everything that stood in his path. Bonds? Friendship? Love? They were nothing before the path of eternal life. The middle-aged man was still laughing in the palace, but as he laughed, he cried, and as he cried, he laughed. Xianxia and Sword Scroll left the underground palace and arrived back above ground. Xianxia gazed at Sword Scroll. "What is it?" It was Sword Scroll who'd pulled him out of there just now. She spoke solemnly. "He's absolutely not ordinary, and he aroused horror within me." Xianxia smiled. "Don't think too much about it. If he had ill intent, we wouldn't have been able to fight back at all, right? As for what he gave us, even if he has some ulterior motives, who cares? In any case, we just have to do what we should do. She glanced at Yang Yi and said, "Nothing troubles you." Yang Yi shook his head. "Not at all. It's just that I have no other choice." Sword Scroll fell silent. Just as Yang Yi had said, no matter what the man wanted, they had no choice. Because they couldn't just return the eternal energy and Dragon Ball, right? In any case, it was all something for the future. A short while later, Sword Scroll glanced at the surroundings and said, "I want to move the entire Northern Sword Sect into the Primordial Pagoda. What do you think?" Yang Yi asked, "What's the point of that?" She replied, "We can create our own organization, a true power. Trust me, we can build a formidable organization within the Primordial Pagoda, and we'll prioritize quality over quantity." An organization. Yang Yi was immediately interested. Sky Maiden and the others possessed extremely good natural talent, so he could gather all of these talented people together, and coupled with the primordial violet energy within the Primordial Pagoda, Snowy's presence, and that cultivation room, their speed of cultivation would multiply. Besides that, he could recruit some formidable demon beasts. After all, they would definitely be willing to join him since he had Snowy by his side. Sword Scroll immediately summoned Oxy when she saw that Yang Yi had no objections. Move the Northern Sword Sect. No one was managing this place now, and no one wanted it. After all, practically all the treasures here had been taken. So, it didn't take long for Oxy to move the entire Northern Sword Sect into the Primordial Pagoda. Meanwhile, Xianxia and the others started making arrangements within the pagoda, and Sword Scroll joined them. After all, she had to study those sword formations. Thus, only Yang Yi, Snowy, and Wang area remained outside. As for Oxy, it was acting as a laborer and obeying the orders of Xianxia and the others. The primal true dragon, on the other hand, was wandering around the pagoda, and it was very satisfied with this place. Meanwhile, Yang Yi looked toward the right, and there was a middle-aged man there. Besides that, there were 2 men and a woman there too. It was the same group of 3 Yang Yi had met earlier. Yang Ye's gaze stopped on the middle-aged man because he was actually a Limit Breaker realm expert. The Limit Breaker realm. While he didn't fear such experts now, he couldn't underestimate them or act carelessly against them. When he saw Yang Yi look in his direction, the middle-aged man nodded at Yang Yi, and then he walked over. "I'm the patriarch of the southern city's Li clan, Li Xinyan. I was once an elder of the Northern Sword Sect." Yang Yi nodded and waited for him to continue. Li Xinyan hesitated for a moment and gazed at Snowy. "Young brother, is she a sprite progenitor?" "A sprite progenitor." Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly. "Why?" Li Xinyan couldn't help but clench his fists when he heard Yang Yi. And then he said, "Can you give her to me?" "Give her to him." Yang Yi chuckled. "That sword told you about her, right?" Li Xinyan replied, "You don't have the strength to protect her. If you're willing to give her to my Li clan, you can ask for anything from us." Yang Yi closed his eyes slowly. "I refuse." Li Xinyan's eyes narrowed slightly, and then a powerful wave of pressure pressed down upon Yang Yi. The pressure of the Limit Breaker realm. Once the powerful pressure appeared, the space here warped, because it couldn't endure the pressure at all. However, Yang Yi was completely unaffected by it. Li Xinyan frowned from the sight of this. He realized that the young man was much stronger than he'd expected. Li Xinyan was about to attack when a sword suddenly appeared before him, and it trembled violently before transforming into a man. It was the sword from the Jade Pendant. The man glanced at Li Xinyan. "I made you come because I fought with your ancestor through life and death, and I thought that I should take care of the Li clan a little, so I asked you to side with him. But I never expected you to try killing him and stealing from him. Are you an idiot?" Li Xinyan glanced at the man and said, "Side with a true Void Realm cultivator? Are you sure you're all right?" The man gazed at Li Xinyan. "This is your last chance." "He doesn't have one." Suddenly, Yang Yi said, "I just happen to want to see if I can kill a Limit Breaker realm expert." A sword howl resounded. "Ha ha!" Li Xinyan suddenly chuckled, and then a wave of powerful sword energy rippled out of him. True Void Realm sword intent. The solemnness in Yang Ye's eyes grew. However, his desire to fight grew stronger too. A sword cultivator. This man was a true sword cultivator, and he was a powerful sword cultivator. Sword cultivators comprehended sword intent and cultivated the sword heart. It was a much more difficult path than ordinary cultivating, but similarly, once one gained success on it, that person's strength would be much, much stronger than an ordinary cultivator. As the sword intent appeared, an invisible wave of pressure appeared in the surroundings, and Li Xianyan's aura changed as well. His aura was sharp now. Li Xianyan took a step forward. Sword intent surged forward like a torrent. Suppression with intent. Meanwhile, Xianxia's eyes narrowed slightly. Bang! An invisible wave of sword intent rippled out of him. True Dao realm sword intent. It was a realm lower than Li Xianyan, but the energy and power it contained wasn't any weaker. It was an unruly sword intent that would fight until the end. Confrontation. Their sword intents immediately entered into confrontation, and they remained still amid the sword intent. Sword intent couldn't be seen or felt, so they seemed like ordinary people standing there. However, only few were aware how dangerous it was around them right now. That space was covered in two types of sword intent. This continued for a long time before Li Xianyan took a step forward. Along with that step, ripples gradually appeared in the surrounding space, and it was like ripples on the surface of a lake. The sword intent had grown stronger. Li Xianyan's sword intent had grown stronger again. Yang Yi didn't move. The sword intent pressed down upon him like a mountain, and he felt pressure, powerful pressure. He knew that Li Xianyan hadn't used his full strength earlier, and Li Xianyan's sword intent was much stronger than he expected. Now that Li Xianyan was revealing his full strength, his sword intent was growing stronger and stronger. If he withdrew the primordial axe of creation or the sword gourd now, he could obliterate it with ease. But Yang Yi didn't. They just continued their confrontation. Just like that, Li Xianyan took a step from time to time, and every step he took would make his sword intent slightly stronger. The sword intent was growing in strength, and space was rippling like a rock had been tossed into a pond. But from the beginning until the end, Yang Yi stood on the spot without taking a single step back. Moreover, his sword intent hadn't retreated either. Avoid the pressure? That wasn't his sword or his Dao. Li Xianyan sped up. At this moment, he seemed like a peerless sword which was ready to attack, and his aura was so strong that it could obliterate the world. Conversely, Yang Yi seemed like a boat in a storm, and he seemed like he would be washed away at any moment. Suppression with sword intent. Meanwhile, Li Xianyan had arrived before Yang Yi. As soon as his foot descended, his sword intent seemed to erupt like countless volcanoes and instantly envelop Yang Yi. Suddenly, Yang Yi looked up, and then his sword intent, which had been suppressed to the limit, erupted abruptly. It was like the self-detonation of an extraordinary expert, and it erupted with all its strength at this moment. Boom! Li Xianyan was pushed backward repeatedly. Meanwhile, the man who was formed from the sword gazed at Yang Yi with astonishment. The true void realm. Yang Ye's sword intent had actually attained the true void realm. The man seemed to have thought of something and gazed at Li Xianyan. Meanwhile, the latter gazed at Yang Yi and smiled. Congratulations! Yang Yi let out a long breath of air and bowed to Li Xian. Thank you. The Li clan's patriarch had no intention to kill him, and he just wanted to help Yang Yi attain an advancement in sword intent. As for the reason, Yang Yi was certain that he would find out soon. Li Xianyan walked over to Yang Yi and sat down, and so did Yang Yi. He suddenly felt that the Li clan's patriarch seemed a little different now. Li Xianyan withdrew a jug of wine and passed it to Yang Yi. Yang Yi didn't refuse and took a mouthful of it. Li Xianyan chuckled and said, "My ancestor told me that there's a sprite progenitor here, and I didn't believe it, so I came to see." Unexpectedly, it was true. Do you know what I thought at that moment? Yang Yi shook his head. Li Xianyan smiled. I thought of leaving as soon as possible, and getting as far away from you as I can. My Li clan isn't bad in this lousy place. After all, I'm at the limit breaker realm and I'm a sword cultivator too. So ordinary organizations would fear me. However, I'm very well aware that if my clan obtains a sprite progenitor, we would definitely suffer calamity. If it was a divine treasure, I may have some desire to obtain it, but if it's this little fellow, I dare not think of it. Yang Yi replied softly. But many do. That's normal. Li Xianyan said. It is a sprite progenitor. Yang Yi grinned and gazed at him. You helped me advance in my sword intent, and this kindness? Li Xianyan waved his hand. I didn't do it for any reason. Of course, it's your problem if you wish to remember it. He stood up as he said that, and then he gazed at the man who was the sword from before. You never showed yourself after my ancestor passed away. So now that you have, what do you plan to do? If you want to leave, my Li clan won't stop you. Of course, it's better if you're willing to stay. After all, my Li clan really doesn't have a good sword besides you. The sword fell silent. Li Xianyan smiled and said, You can make your own choice. The man glanced at Yang Yi. In the end, he transformed into a sword that descended before the woman. The woman was stunned. Li Xianyan grinned. Take it. She took it with slightly trembling hands, and then she gazed at Li Xianyan. Patriarch? This? Li Xianyan smiled. It's just a sword, so don't think too much about it. Of course, don't treat it shabbily either. Just do as you did in the past, all right? She hurriedly nodded. Meanwhile, Li Xianyan gazed at Yang Yi. Young brother Yang, my intuition tells me that you may know why the Northern Sword Sect was annihilated overnight, right? Yang Yi nodded. I do know a little. Li Xianyan sighed softly. I know that some things are better left unknown, but my ancestor died that night too. I want to know which organization was actually able to annihilate the Northern Sword Sect's master who was strong like a god, and even kill numerous Limitbreaker realm experts. Yang Yi fell silent for a short while and said, It wasn't the people on this side. Li Xianyan was stunned. And then he laughed bitterly. I see. I understand now. I hope we meet again. He transformed into a ray of light that vanished into the sky. Meanwhile, the woman and the two men bowed slightly to Yang Yi and vanished into the sky as well. Only Yang Yi remained here. Yang Yi glanced at the surroundings, and a smile curled up on his face. He'd gained quite a bit this time. Yang Yi restrained his thoughts and was about to leave, but a woman suddenly appeared not too far away. She waved at Yang Yi and smiled. Long time no see. Yang Yi frowned when he saw her. She was the Nanli clan's Nanli Meng. Nanli Meng sized up Yang Yi and said, Tisk, TSK. Your speed of improvement is amazing. Yang Yi replied indifferently, Do you need something? Nanli Meng withdrew a thick scroll and unfurled it. I have good news and bad news. Let's start with the bad news. Some old geezers at the Eternal River have found out about the sprite progenitor, and the entire Eternal River was shocked by the news. Countless old geezers who've stayed hidden until now have left for here. If you're willing to give me a divine treasure, I can tell you about their origins and true strength. A divine treasure. Yang Yi glanced at her and replied, I don't have one. Anyway, knowing that doesn't make a difference, doesn't it? She gave him a thumbs up. Smart. Come, let's continue. The bad news doesn't end there. The Freedom Sect, Longevity Sect, Creation Sect, and Immortality Sect, the four great powers of the Eternal River, have joined forces. Moreover, they've started summoning back all their experts in the Eternal River. Right, do you know how strong those experts are? I'm sure you don't, because you don't know what kind of people would dare to enter the Eternal River. She pointed at where Li Xianyan had just stood and continued. That fellow was quite strong, right? Unfortunately, he has no right to enter the Eternal River. Yang Yi fell silent for a long time before he asked, What about the good news? Calm down. She blinked. The bad news isn't over yet. Yang Yi wanted to attack her. Nanli Meng continued, Besides Eternal Border, I heard that the experts of other worlds are traveling here too. There are weaklings and strong experts among them. Of course, they are all strong to you. Besides that, do you remember the 6 clans? Their ancestors are still alive, including my Nanli clan's ancestor. They are all at the Eternal River. Now they have started to return. At that time, all your enmity will converge in one huge battle. It'll definitely be fun. Oh right, all of this isn't the worst news. Do you know what's the worst news? Yang Yi asked indifferently. There's something worse? She chuckled. The worst news is... She pointed at him. You're actually just at the true void realm. Xianxia, oh Xianxia, you're only at the true void realm. Tell me, how will you survive? No, I should ask, how do you want to die? Xianxia's eyelids twitched. He forcefully restrained his impulse to attack her and asked, what about the good news? She chuckled. One divine treasure. Give me that and I'll tell you. Xianxia glanced at her. Just die. Xianxia turned around and walked away. Suddenly, she said, you've been to the eternal secret realm, so you should have been to that village. I'm sure you know about some things from the primal era, right? Xianxia stopped and gazed at her, and she looked him in the eyes. That is just a small portion of the huge battlefield from all those years ago. That huge battlefield has appeared. The primal battlefield. Xianxia frowned. What are you trying to tell me? She walked over to him. That battlefield has always been kept under the control of the few greatest powers of eternal border, like the Longevity Sect, Creation Sect, Freedom Sect, Immortality Sect, and the power that stands behind me. But 2 days ago, a sword cultivator slashed open the restrictions there and went inside. Now, in theory, anyone can go inside. So, are you interested in going? Of course, we'll be sneaking in. Xianxia asked, a sword cultivator? She nodded. An unknown sword cultivator. The leaders of all those powers have started pursuing that sword cultivator. So he's probably going to die soon. After all, he's up against around 6 Limitbreaker Realm experts, and they aren't ordinary Limitbreaker Realm experts. Xianxia was stunned speechless. A sword cultivator? A weird expression appeared on Xianxia's face. He hesitated for a moment and asked, do you know what he looked like? Nanli Meng glanced at Xianxia and said, I didn't ask, but he seems to have been wearing a cloud-white robe. Why? Do you know him? A cloud-white robe. Xianxia's face grew even weirder. They were hunting that sword cultivator. They were actually hunting him. Xianxia's face grew weirder and weirder, because he'd guessed who it was. Obviously, it was the Unfettered One. The Unfettered One's true strength had always been a mystery, but he did know that those powers were about to suffer terribly. Meanwhile, Nanli Meng asked, you know him? Xianxia glanced at her and nodded. Sort of, she asked. Is he strong? Xianxia thought for a moment and said, we're equally matched. Nanli Meng walked over to Xianxia. Needless to say, your skin is the thickest among the people I know. Serious? I'm not lying. Xianxia was at a loss for words. Nanli Meng folded the thick scroll in her hand and said, are you going to the primal battlefield? Xianxia asked, why me? Nanli Meng replied, not you. I'm actually here for the sprite progenitor. So, what do you think? I'm frank enough, right? Xianxia understood everything now. Snowy. Nanli Meng was after Snowy. What could Snowy do? Find treasures, of course. Not only could she find treasures, she could make them go with her. It could be said that if he and Nanli Meng searched the primal battlefield on their own, they may return empty-handed. However, if they had Snowy, then they would never return empty-handed. Unless the primal battlefield really had nothing in it. Xianxia thought for a moment and said, the primal battlefield? Do you want to know more about it? She smiled. Of course, just one divine treasure. The primordial acts of creation, primordial pagoda, or sword-gored work. I don't want to know. Xianxia suddenly interrupted her while he felt that she'd gone mad with desire for divine treasures. He seemed to have thought of something and summoned Snowy. He pointed at Nanli Meng and said, Snowy, see if she has any treasures. Don't hold back. Take everything you can. Snowy glanced at her, and Nanli Meng gazed at Snowy with a smile on her face. A short while later, Snowy gazed at Xianxia and shook her head. You think I didn't take any precautions? Nanli Meng suddenly smiled. I knew you had this little fellow with you, so wouldn't I be an idiot if I didn't take any precautions? All right, let's not waste time. Just tell me, are you going or not? If you are, then we have to hurry up. Xianxia thought for a moment and replied, all right. Nanli Meng smiled. Let's go. As soon as she finished speaking, she tapped her finger forward, and a circle of blue light appeared before them. She walked in first. Xianxia didn't hesitate and followed her. In the teleportation passageway, Nanli Meng glanced at Snowy, who was on Yang Ye's shoulder, and Snowy gazed at her. Nanli Meng smiled. "Why are you looking at me?" Snowy pointed at the thick scroll in her grasp. Obviously, she was asking what it was. Nanli Meng's smile froze, and then it vanished while she spoke seriously. "Why you think it's extraordinary?" Her voice was trembling slightly. Yang Yi couldn't help but gaze at her. Snowy glanced at the scroll with a little curiosity in her eyes. A short while later, she withdrew her gaze and didn't look at Nanli Meng anymore. "Ha ha!" Suddenly, Nanli Meng started laughing, and her laughter grew louder and louder. Yang Yi frowned and wondered if she'd gone mad. A short while later, Nanli Meng returned to normal and gazed at Yang Yi. "I'll give her face and tell you about the primal battlefield for free. It's called a battlefield, but it's more like a primal tomb, because too many experts from the primal era died there. A terribly huge number of experts died during that shocking battle." Yang Yi asked, "Was it an internal battle? Or something else?" She shook her head slightly. "It wasn't internal. I don't know the specifics, nor do many others. All I do know is that they died miserably in that battle." She fell silent at this point. Yang Yi didn't pursue any answers. He was just asking out of curiosity, but it had nothing to do with him. He couldn't even guarantee his own safety right now. Yang Yi restrained his thoughts and asked, "How long before we get there?" Nanli Meng replied, 2 hours. Conceal yourself once we get there. They won't hunt you until their experts return from the Eternal River. However, they will definitely attack if you go to them." Yang Yi spoke solemnly. "You keep speaking about the Eternal River. What kind of place is it?" Nanli Meng glanced at Yang Yi and said, "A very, very terrifying place. If you go there with your current strength, you'll probably die in an hour." Yang Yi was stunned speechless. They didn't speak more, and Yang Yi immersed his consciousness into the primordial pagoda. At this moment, it had undergone a tremendous change. In the world at the first level, Little Sky Continent. It was Little Sky who'd given it this name, and Yang Yi hadn't changed it. There was a new sect here. Xianxia and the others had moved the Northern Sword Sect to the tallest mountain in Little Sky Continent. The mountain had no name, but Xianxia had given it a name now, Void Mountain. The Sword Sect on Profound Continent had been on Void Mountain too, and it was there that Yang Ye's life had started. Besides the Northern Sword Sect, there were countless other smaller mountains on Void Mountain. They had been modified, and there were palaces on them. It was where Yang Yi and the others would be living. Every one of them had a mountain. As for the spirit veins, all of them were beneath Void Mountain. They were happy to be there. After all, they needed to cultivate, and Sword Scroll didn't limit their freedom. They could go anywhere because all that mattered was the spirit energy they provided. Behind Void Mountain was a boundless mountain range, and it belonged to Oxy and the primal true dragon. Only those two fellows lived there for now. As for Snowy, the entire primordial pagoda was hers. Something worth mentioning was Little Sky. Now, she'd become the Heaven Tao of this world. She had been the Heaven Tao of a world in the past, so she was back to her old job. As far as she was concerned, it wasn't difficult at all. Moreover, there was no fighting or killing in this world, so she loved it. As for the sprites they brought over from the large universe, they'd scattered all over the world here. Cultivate. They needed to cultivate too, and their presence throughout this world was very beneficial to it. Every sprite would bring a different form of energy to where they went. The energy of the 5 elements. There was yin, yang, and the 5 elements in the world. Now, this world had the 5 elements, and according to Sword Scroll, yin and yang would come later. They had to take it slow and gradually perfect this world. Little Sky Continent was finally on the right track. As he gazed at the world around him, Yang Yi had a daring idea. The sword domain. If he used this world to execute the sword domain, in other words, if he relied on the energy of this world to execute it and shrunk it into his sword domain, or perhaps make this world his sword domain. Needless to say, he was shocked by his thoughts. Rely on the energy of a world. Condense the energy of a world. Would it work? In the outside world, he could only condense his own sword domain, but was unable to use the energy of that world. After all, it didn't belong to him, and the laws of the world wouldn't obey him. But this was Little Sky Continent, and it was his own. So, if he relied on its energy, it seemed to be possible. However, there were many, many issues. For example, how to accomplish it or if his body could endure it. In the teleportation passageway, Yang Yi opened his eyes and gazed at his hands. I should make some time to try it. Meanwhile, Nanli Meng suddenly asked, Try what? Yang Yi glanced at her. Nothing. Humph. Nanli Meng moved her gaze toward the distance. The primal battlefield is filled with opportunity, but it's filled with danger too. Otherwise, those powers wouldn't have sealed it off to slowly explore. Because even they dare not to openly go inside and explore it. Yang Yi asked, Why? Nanli Meng explained, You've been to the eternal secret realm, so you should be aware of the existences there, right? The primal battlefield is more dangerous than there, and you can even find the remnants of the souls of some primal demons and primal experts there. The souls of true primal demons and primal experts. Moreover, it wouldn't be that bad if that was all. The problem is that there may be some other unknown things there too. Yang Yi suddenly said, There definitely are. Nanli Meng gazed at him, but Yang Yi said nothing and looked into the distance. Who was the unfettered one? He knew better than anyone. That fellow only went to places with extraordinary experts, and he couldn't be bothered with other ordinary places. Since the unfettered one had gone there, it was obvious that something there had attracted his attention. Only the strong, those who were truly strong, could attract his attention. Experts. Yang Yi closed his eyes slowly. He thought of the unfettered one's sword, how strong it was, and how impossible it was to defeat. A smile gradually appeared on the corners of Yang Ye's face, because he thought of many people like Su Qingshi, Zhuang Weiran, and Nanjing Snowy. A long time later, Yang Yi opened his eyes and looked into the distance. Ties. It is my sword Dao. Favorite ties. Sword cultivators cultivated the heart, and they severed ties, because they refused to allow any ties to bind their hearts. After all, how could they reach the peak of the sword Dao if their hearts were bound? Since the ancient times, which expert hadn't severed his or her ties to the mortal world to attain the supreme grand Dao? Thus, many sword cultivators ceaselessly severed their ties to everything on their path. Every one they severed made their sword Dao stronger. Undeniably, it was a path in the sword Dao, and it couldn't be considered to be wrong. But Yang Yi was taking a different path. Ties? As far as he was concerned, they were part of his sword Dao. Every one of them was a little more responsibility to him, and every additional piece of responsibility meant that he had to grow stronger. Ties were his sword Dao and his motivation to grow stronger. We're here. Suddenly, Nanli Meng's voice resounded. Yang Yi restrained his thoughts and looked over. At this moment, they had left the territory of the northern continent. Bang! They vanished on the spot and appeared in the clouds. Yang Yi asked, We're in Eternal Border? Nanli Meng nodded. Don't tell me those people of Eternal Border don't know where I am. She smiled. They definitely were aware before this, but not anymore. She withdrew a small rock as she spoke. Do you know what this is? A heaven's secret stone. Can conceal you from the heavens, so no one can use any means to locate you. Of course, it's a little exaggerated and nothing is absolute. In short, you're safe for now, and no one can locate you. Huh? You seem like you want it? No problem, I'll sell it to you for 1 divine treasure. Hey! Don't go. Pseudo-divine treasures work too. Hey! We can discuss this? Around 10 minutes later, Nanli Meng led him to a boundless mountain range, and its size exceeded his imagination. It was huge. Absolutely huge. Even with his field of vision that could see almost 500,000 kilometers away, he still couldn't see anything beyond an endless mountain range. Nanli Meng pointed to the left. If you go all the way to the end in that direction, you'll reach a mountain range. Go past it to arrive at the Eternal River, and go past the Eternal River and destroy the walls between universes to enter the Eternal Universe. Countless people, sprites, demons, and experts have their lifetime goals set beyond the Eternal River. And the greatest cemetery of this world isn't the primal battlefield or any other place, It's the eternal river. The remains of experts are everywhere over there. She gazed at Yang Yi and smiled. Want to go have a look? Yang Yi glanced in that direction and said, why do so many wish to enter the eternal universe? I think this world isn't bad at all. Nanli Meng smiled. In the mortal world, the poor want money. Why do you think they want to make money? Because they want to live better lives, and they want to enter the ranks of the wealthy. As for the wealthy, they have money, but they still work hard to earn more. Because they want to go higher. The eternal universe is where the wealthy are, and we are the poor. Yang Yi spoke indifferently. Since we're at different levels, why forcefully try to join them? You're talking nonsense. Nanli Meng rolled her eyes at him. It's because you're richer than anyone. Do any powers in the eternal dimension have a sprite progenitor? Does anyone have a sprite progenitor and primordial violet energy? Not only that, you have a pile of divine treasures and pseudo-divine treasures. Tell me, what do you lack? Spirit energy? With that little fellow by your side, you have an endless supply of spirit energy. Treasures? You have no less than 3 divine treasures now, right? Moreover, you'll get even more with her by your side. Nanli Meng glanced at him and continued. You're so calm because you're even richer than the people in the eternal dimension. As far as you're concerned, all of them are poor too. So, of course you disdain to go there. Yang Yi was at a loss for words. Nanli Meng shook her head. Forget that. It just makes my heart hurt. Let's go and see if we can seize this opportunity to make a fortune in the primal battlefield. Once she finished speaking, she transformed into a ray of white light that vanished into the distance. Yang Yi gazed at Snowy, who was on his shoulder. Are we very wealthy? Snowy blinked, thought for a moment, and then shook her head while waving her paws. Yang Yi understood what she meant. She meant that they were very poor. What was being wealthy in Snowy's world? In any case, as far as she was concerned, it took many, many divine treasures, so many to the point they were impossible to count, and that only made them barely wealthy. Yang Yi sighed softly. Luckily, that woman left already. Otherwise, she'll probably die from heart pain if she understands you. Yang Yi chuckled and vanished into the sky with Snowy in his arms. 2 hours later, Yang Yi and Nanli Meng finally left the mountain range, and there was a door at the end of it. A door that was over 3 kilometers tall and wide. There were countless cracks above the door, and a huge mark from a sword at its center. Nanli Meng spoke softly. There used to be a very, very powerful restriction there, and it was something those few powers set up together. Even a limit-breaker realm expert wouldn't be able to break through it, and only the secret tokens they have would be able to open it. However, that sword cultivator broke open the restriction. If he didn't use any external sources of strength, then his strength is really quite terrifying. She glanced at the surroundings and tapped the door. Bang! The door opened, and then she grabbed Yang Ye's shoulder and flashed inside. Right after they entered, a few auras suddenly appeared. However, something flew out of the door. It was a ball of light that emanated 7-colored light. A divine treasure. At the same time, a voice came from within the door. I want to try my luck, so please give me this chance. Please accept my kind intentions. A few moments of silence ensued, and then the divine treasure vanished. At the same time, a voice resounded. Miss Meng, be careful. Don't go too far south. The door closed slowly. On the other side of the door, in a forest, Yang Yi and Nanli Meng were walking side by side. Nanli Meng smiled. See that? Money can do anything. Yang Yi replied indifferently. I thought you were great enough to get through. I didn't expect you to have to pay with a divine treasure. Nanli Meng shook her head. That's what you don't understand. I can just use force, and they won't be able to do anything to me. However, as time passes, would anyone still be willing to do business with me? Reputation is the most important thing to business people. Moreover, a divine treasure won't just buy me a way in, it'll buy me a way out. Trust me, if I encounter any trouble here, so long as it isn't really huge trouble, those fellows would be happy to come help me. It's because they know I won't make them help me for free. She patted Yang Yi on the shoulder. It's a way to deal with things in the world, and you can learn it. Knowing how to be tactful is never a bad thing. Yang Yi thought for a moment and nodded. I see. Nanli Meng glanced at Yang Yi and said, They say you're a madman who loves to kill, but I noticed that besides your bad temper, you're not very difficult to get along with. In the end, it's because of that little fellow. Suddenly, Snowy stared at Nanli Meng, and an ethereal axe had appeared in her grasp. Snowy waved the axe repeatedly while staring at Nanli Meng. It was like she was saying, Go on. Continue. Obviously, she'd learned that from Yang Yi. Nanli Meng chuckled and didn't say anything. She still had to give the little fellow some face. After all, she didn't want to offend her or she would have a really depressing time in this place. Suddenly, Snowy looked toward the side, and Nanli Meng's eyes instantly lit up from the sight of this. She immediately started staring at Snowy without blinking. A short while passed before Snowy withdrew her gaze. She glanced at Nanli Meng, and then bent down to whisper something in Yang Ye's ears. Nanli Meng's face immediately darkened. Is the little fellow that vengeful? Meanwhile, Yang Yi gazed in the direction that Snowy had gazed just moments ago. There's danger there, but there are treasures too. Nanli Meng asked, How dangerous? Yang Yi replied softly, Very. She smiled. That's very normal. Fortune is always accompanied by danger. Come. Let's go have a look and see what's over there. She sped up once she finished speaking. Yang Yi thought for a moment and followed her. No wealth was obtained without risk. They'd unconsciously forgotten something, and it was the direction that the expert outside had told them not to, the south. All along the way, they had vigilant expressions on their faces, even Nanli Meng. Even she didn't dare to be careless in this place. A long time later, they finally stopped, and a river was before them. It was over 100 m wide, and they couldn't see the ends of the river on either side. Both of them fell silent at the sight of it. A river of blood. It wasn't water that filled the river but blood. Suddenly, Yang Ye's figure shook, and then a blood-red saber flashed out of him before entering the river. Bang! The entire river started boiling. Moreover, the sword precursor suddenly left him and entered the river too. In an instant, countless streams of blood surged toward the sword precursor and Invincible. In the river, Invincible was still a saber, but the sword precursor had returned to human form. She bathed within the river and allowed endless blood to surge toward her. Meanwhile, her gaze was on Yang Yi, the sword spirit who'd become a sword of slaughter for him. What was the greatest pain for a sword? It was to be unable to keep up with its master. Yang Yi gazed at her, and then he suddenly stretched out his hand. A moment later, a ray of cold light flashed at his wrist. In an instant, countless strands of blood shot out of his wrist and surged toward her. Nanli Meng's eyes narrowed. Feeding his sword with his own blood. Feeding his sword with his own blood. Blood surged incessantly from Yang Ye's wrist into Sword Spirit. In just a short while, Yang Yi had turned pale. Meanwhile, Sword Spirit took a deep and long glance at Yang Yi before going down to the river's bottom. Yang Yi lowered his hand. He knew she wanted to grow stronger and continue fighting by his side, and he wanted the same. Regardless of whether it was the Sword Supreme, primordial axe of creation, or any other weapon, they weren't as important as the sword precursor to him. It had been by his side throughout his life, and it was the only sword who was willing to become a sword of slaughter for him. As for why he hadn't been using her lately, it wasn't because he felt she was too weak, he was protecting her instead. His enemies were much, much stronger than him, and the slightest mistake may lead to her death. Just like when he was against the founding ancestor of the Immortal estate, both the Sword Supreme and Invincible had almost been destroyed. Now, the Sword Spirit had an opportunity to grow stronger, so he naturally intended to help her the best he could. In the river, the blood was gradually vanishing. Yang Yi walked over to Nanli Meng, and she spoke softly. This river of blood isn't ordinary. Yang Yi gazed at her, and she spoke softly. It's the blood of experts. In the past, countless experts perished in this battlefield, and their blood converged into a river. Since this blood remained after so many years, it proved how powerful their former owners were. Your saber and sword will benefit tremendously. Of course, it's the same for you. Suddenly, Snowy waved her paw at Sword Spirit. Nanli Meng gazed at Snowy while the latter grinned at Sword Spirit and blew. A strand of pure spirit energy surged into the bottom of the river, and then the entire river started to surge. Snowy didn't stop and ceaselessly sent more into her. Nanli Meng had a wisp of shock in her eyes. Sprite Ascension. Everything had its own spirit, and it could be improved, of course. However, most had to rely on themselves to gradually accomplish that. In other words, via cultivation. But Snowy was forcefully accomplishing that. Needless to say, it was heaven-defying. Meanwhile, the blood within the river was still vanishing, and a long time passed before all of it vanished. A sword and a saber shot up into the air from the bottom of the river. In an instant, the sky was blood-red. Yang Yi stretched out his hand, and a saber appeared in his grasp. It was invincible. At this moment, it was vastly different from before. Its body was blood-red, and a casual swing carried monstrous blood-red mist. Besides that, holding it felt like he was holding a volcano that was about to erupt, and the powerful energy it contained made even his heart palpitate slightly. A divine treasure. After absorbing the blood in the river, Invincible had finally stopped being a pseudo-divine treasure. Yang Yi put it away and looked up. A blood-red woman was walking over through the sky. It was Sword Spirit. Blood-red hair, a blood-red dress, and like a demon from hell. However, in Yang Ye's eyes, she seemed so familiar and close, because this demon had only become like this for him. Sword Spirit walked over to Yang Yi, and she touched his face gently. Sword Spirit cracked a smile, but it was quite a horrifying smile. She seemed to have thought of something at this point and gazed at Snowy. The latter blinked while a smile appeared on her little face. Sword Spirit. Snowy and Zier were the first to join Yang Yi. Then it was Sword Spirit. Could be said that they were the earliest to join Yang Ye's group. While Snowy hadn't really come into contact with Sword Spirit much, she still treated Sword Spirit as a friend. So, while Sword Spirit was completely blood-red, Snowy didn't fear her at all. Sword Spirit grinned. "Thank you." Snowy waved her paw to display that it wasn't necessary. Yang Yi smiled, and then he took Sword Spirit's hand. In an instant, Sword Spirit vanished, and a sword appeared in Yang Ye's grasp. It seemed like a sword made of blood. Moreover, as soon as he held it, the remaining blood in his body started to surge. Besides that, he had a strange feeling like the sword was a part of him. Nanli Meng smiled. "Congratulations. 2 divine treasures." Yang Yi glanced at her and put Sword Spirit back into the primordial pagoda. Both she and the Sword Supreme had their own territory on Void Mountain. After all, they weren't ordinary swords. The Sword Precursor arrived on the mountain where the Sword Supreme was, and the two of them exchanged glances from afar. A moment later, 2 rays of light flashed. One good, one evil. Sparring. Yang Yi didn't pay any further attention to them because their spar would be beneficial to both of them. Outside the pagoda, Yang Yi spoke softly, "Let's go." Nanli Meng nodded, and they walked toward the river. At the end of the river was a huge circular platform that was over 3 kilometers wide and 1 kilometer tall, and there were countless mysterious symbols inscribed on it. Nanli Meng stared at it. "If I'm not wrong, it should be an ascension platform from the primal era." Yang Yi gazed at her. "An ascension platform?" She nodded slightly. "You're from a small world, so you should know that when many experts reach a certain level, they choose to break through the barriers of the world and rise to a higher plane." Yang Yi frowned slightly. Those experts from the primal era wanted to ascend to the eternal dimension? She fell silent for a long time and replied, "Maybe not." Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly. "What do you mean?" Nanli Meng shook her head. "The history of that time is too vague. What kind of era was it? What caused the battle? Who was the enemy? All of these are still a mystery." Yang Yi glanced at the platform, hesitated for a moment, and asked, "What can it do?" She replied indifferently, "It's very useful to extraordinary experts, but as for you, it's probably useless, because you're too weak and can't use it at all." Yang Yi was at a loss for words. Nanli Meng was about to speak when Yang Yi waved his right hand. and he moved the huge platform into the primordial pagoda. Nanli Meng felt speechless. It had been moved to a small mountain on Void Mountain Range. Actually, Yang Yi didn't think too much about it and just felt that it was very imposing. However, he didn't know that this small action of his would bring endless trouble to him in the future. There was good trouble and bad trouble, of course. "Are you a bandit?" Nanli Meng walked over to him and stared at Yang Yi. She may be greedy for wealth too, but she had her principles. But Yang Yi was a complete and utter bandit. Yang Yi spoke indifferently. "In any case, no one wants it, so it doesn't matter that I want it, right?" She withdrew her gaze and replied indifferently, "Don't blame me for not warning you. Everything in this world, and especially divine treasures, come with karma. You may be fine now, but it doesn't mean that you'll be fine in the future." Yang Yi nodded. "Thank you for the reminder." He glanced at Snowy and continued, "Will there be any karma if she takes them?" Snowy blinked. "Karma? Is that delicious?" The corners of Nanli Meng's eyes twitched. What kind of karma would a sprite progenitor suffer from? Of course, there would be karma, but it would be good karma. It was like after an ugly man saved a beautiful woman. The woman would only thank him at most. However, if it was a handsome man, she may get together with him. Good or bad karma depended on the person. Nanli Meng shook her head. "Fine, you win." Of course she understood what Yang Yi meant. Snowy would take the karma of all those treasures, and he would take Snowy's karma. Simply speaking, he'd taken the greatest karma, so why would he worry about smaller ones like that? They continued forward, and it didn't take long for them to arrive at a mountain. It was a boundless mountain range that stood before them, and two towering mountains were not too far away from them. The towering mountains were like a gateway that kept all outsiders away. They exchanged glances and were about to head inside. Suddenly, Nanli Meng's expression changed drastically, and she grabbed Yang Ye's shoulder and flashed over 300 m away. Bang! Right after they flashed away from there, a huge hole appeared where they'd been standing. Within it was a pitch-black axe. Yang Yi and Nanli Meng looked up, and the two mountains had suddenly started moving slowly in their direction. It didn't take long for the ground to start quaking. Between the two mountains, a headless man walked out slowly from behind them. Every step he took made the ground and the mountains tremble. He wore armor, was headless, held a huge axe in his right grasp, and was covered in injuries. Yang Yi and Nanli Meng exchanged glances. Suddenly, the headless man leaped up, and it made their expressions changed drastically. They retreated again, and as soon as they did, an axe descended to the ground. Boom! The ground collapsed. Yang Yi nudged Nanli Meng and said, "Senior, it's time for you to put on a display of your strength." Nanli Meng gazed at the headless man, nodded, and then withdrew a white leaf. Right when Yang Yi thought she was about to fight the headless man, Nanli Meng vanished soundlessly. She'd vanished without making a sound. Yang Yi was stunned on the spot, because he couldn't sense her aura at all, not even a little. Yang Yi seemed to have thought of something at this point, and his expression changed drastically. He cursed, "Damn you! You?" Yang Ye's voice stopped abruptly because the headless man was in front of him, and the huge axe which seemed capable of splitting the world arrived with him. How could Yang Yi dare to act carelessly? However, he didn't choose to go head-on against the axe. He tapped the tip of his foot against the ground and moved to the side. At the same time, a blood-red sword stabbed at the headless man's shoulder. But Yang Yi seemed to have underestimated the headless man's reaction speed. At the instant his axe missed, the headless man's axe had swept horizontally, and it was so powerful that Yang Yi felt suffocated. If it struck him, even his body would be transformed into mush. He didn't dare take it head-on. Yang Yi tapped the tip of his foot against the ground and floated around 30 m back. Hiss! The axe missed, and then the headless man stomped his right foot down. Bang! The ground collapsed. At the same time, he relied on the counterforce to leap up and instantly arrive before Yang Yi while his axe chopped down at Yang Yi. It was simply capable of chopping open the world. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly as he stomped his right foot down. Hiss! Yang Yi transformed into a ray of light that moved 300 m back while he slowly raised his blood-red sword with both hands. The headless man hurled the huge axe at Yang Yi. It tore through the air and blasted open everything before it. Slash! As soon as Yang Yi said that, his sword descended. The sword domain. 2 swings. As soon as the second swing descended, a rumbling explosion resounded. Yang Yi was pushed over 1 kilometer back. As for the axe, it flew back to the headless man's grasp. However, it wasn't that easy for him to catch either. At the instant he grabbed it, the headless man had been pushed over 300 m back as he dispersed the force within the axe. But just a moment later, the headless man charged at Yang Yi again. Suddenly, 2 rays of golden light flashed. Flying blades. 2 golden flying blades. The headless man didn't even attempt to dodge the flying blades. He swung his axe horizontally and blasted them away, but 3 swords shot over like bolts of lightning from behind the flying blades. The headless man still didn't dodge and swung the axe swiftly. Bang! 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 3 swords were blasted away. Meanwhile, Yang Yi suddenly appeared before the headless man, and a ray of blood-red sword energy descended. The headless man immediately raised his huge axe against it. Bang! They immediately split apart upon colliding, and both of them were pushed back. Suddenly, 2 flying blades and 3 swords flashed, and they shot toward the headless man's weak points. The headless man had just stopped himself when he swiftly swung his axe. Bang! A wave of powerful light rippled out of the axe, and it blasted Yang Ye's flying blades and swords to where they'd come from. Moreover, the headless man suddenly took a step forward and swung his axe at Yang Yi from afar. A powerful aura immediately locked onto Yang Yi. Hiss! The space before the headless man suddenly cracked open, and it was like cloth which had been sliced open by a sword. The world was split open before the axe. Yang Ye's expression changed from the sight of this. Meanwhile, Nanli Meng's voice resounded in his mind. Watch out! It's the strength of 2 worlds. 2 worlds. Yang Yi didn't have the time to think about it. He grabbed the sword precursor with both hands while his profound primal energy surged madly into his arms. A moment later, he swung it down with both hands. The sword domain. 3 swings. Yang Yi didn't dare to hold back at all when facing this attack, and he immediately swung his sword 3 times with the sword domain. Could slice open the world. However, as soon as it descended, his expression changed drastically, and then his figure was instantly blasted over 3 kilometers away. As soon as he stopped himself, a wisp of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. Moreover, a huge expanse of the ground behind him started to collapse. The headless man was absolutely strong. Yang Yi looked up at the headless man. The man's strength was absolutely formidable, especially that last attack. It could be said that if it was before, when he was still at the True Dao realm, he wouldn't have been able to resist it. Even now, he was barely able to accomplish that. Suddenly, the headless man's axe shot through the air at Yang Yi. Hiss! The space in a huge area between them instantly turned ethereal. The strength of 2 worlds in a single axe. Meanwhile, Nanli Meng's voice resounded in Yang Ye's head. Fight! Fight with all you've got. If you're able to last 100 rounds against him, then ordinary Limitbreaker realm experts will be no threat to you. Fight! A ferocious smile curled up on Yang Ye's lips. His desire to fight had been aroused. Since he advanced from the True Dao realm, he hadn't truly fought to his heart's content. Now he wanted to fight. Bang! A powerful wave of sword intent swept out of Yang Yi, and then a sword howl resounded as a sword stabbed at the axe. Boom! As soon as they collided, the sword energy was blasted back. Meanwhile, a figure suddenly appeared behind the headless man. Backstab. Yang Yi hadn't used it for a very, very long time. Now he was using it again. There were no weak techniques, only weak users. His current strength couldn't be compared to the test, and Backstab's might couldn't be compared to the past either. A speck of cold light stabbed at the headless man's back, but it missed. It missed. Yang Yi turned around immediately and swung his sword. Meanwhile, a fist slammed against his stomach. Bang! Xianxia's body curled up as it flew back. The headless man stretched out his hand and gestured, and the axe behind Xiangyi immediately shot at his back. It was going straight for the back of his head. Xiangyi didn't turn around, he just issued a command in his heart and 3 swords swiftly shot out of the sword gourd. They immediately transformed into 3 rays of golden light that slammed against the axe. Bang! 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 Explosions resounded behind Xiangyi, and Xiangyi shot at the headless man. The headless man took a step forward, clenched his right fist, and slammed it forward. Bang! The space around the headless man's fist was obliterated. The strength within it hadn't leaked out at all, and all of it was converged within the fist. It carried the strength of 2 worlds. As soon as Xiangyi's sword descended upon the fist, it trembled violently and curved into a strange arc. If the sword precursor hadn't risen to the ranks of divine treasures, this punch would have shattered it. Bang! The powerful force of it blasted Xiangyi away. Xiangyi's feet were dragged against the ground as the force pushed him back, and it went on for a few breaths of time before Xiangyi suddenly stabbed his sword into the ground. Hiss! Xiangyi finally stopped. A wisp of blood seeped out slowly from the corner of his mouth. Suddenly, the headless man squatted down, and Xiangyi's eyelids twitched from the sight of this. What is that fellow doing? A moment later, the headless man stomped his feet down, and he slammed his axe at Xiangyi. Axe fusion. Powerful aura locked onto Xiangyi. At this moment, he couldn't dodge at all, and the aura was suffocating. Face it. He could only face it head-on. Xiangyi took a deep breath as he slowly placed the sword precursor against his forehead, while his profound primal energy surged madly into his sword. Moreover, the veins on his arms had started to bulge. Physical strength. Besides that, endless sword intent and slaughter intent swept out from within him. In the end, all of it surged into the sword in his grasp. The axe arrived. Xiangyi stabbed the sword precursor forward with both hands. The sword domain. 1 swing. A second swing. A third swing. After the third swing, he swung again. 4 swings. As soon as the 4th swing was completed, Xiangyi's body cracked open. Especially his arms, they cracked open in layers. His ultimate attack. This could be considered as his strongest attack while not relying on external sources of strength like the sword gourd and soul-devouring technique. He'd truly put his all in this attack. All 4 attacks overlapped. Bang! A figure was blasted away. It wasn't Xiangyi but the headless man. The headless man was blasted to the distant mountain, and when he descended to the ground, the powerful force of the collision still pushed him backward repeatedly. In the end, his body slammed against the mountain wall and finally stopped. Once he stopped, the axe in his grasp shattered into pieces. Xiangyi was in a worse state. As soon as he finished swinging those 4 attacks, his body collapsed. Countless strands of blood were seeping out incessantly from him, and they instantly bathed him in blood. It was his full strength that was behind that attack. For overlapped swings of the sword domain could rival the strength of 2 worlds. However, his body couldn't endure such strength, so the consequence of forcefully using it was the collapse of his body. If his body hadn't been tempered and enhanced by the Dragon Ball of the primal true dragon, that attack would have been enough to make his body shatter completely to the point even his soul would have been destroyed. Xiangyi laid there on the ground while his primordial violet energy ceaselessly repaired his body. As for the eternal energy, it remained completely silent. Suddenly, the headless man charged at Xiangyi. Every step he took caused the ground to tremble violently, as if it was an earthquake. It was absolutely shocking. Suddenly, a ray of white light flashed out of Xiangyi, and it dispersed to reveal Snowy. Snowy clenched her paws as she gazed at the headless man. She was slightly nervous and afraid, but she couldn't run. Xiangyi was behind her. The headless man was growing closer and closer. Right when he arrived around 30 m away, Snowy suddenly spat out countless eternal immortal crystals. There were many of them, and they were different than normal eternal immortal crystals. They had been made by her with primordial violet energy, so ordinary eternal immortal crystals couldn't compare to them at all. Meanwhile, the headless man stopped. Snowy pointed at the crystals, and then pointed at the headless man. She was saying that they were his, so just stop fighting. Meanwhile, she placed her other paw behind her back. There was an ethereal axe in it. The headless man just stood there. Snowy gazed at the headless man while holding tightly to the primordial axe of creation behind her. She decided that if negotiations broke down, she would swing the axe. The headless man ignored the pile of eternal immortal crystals and stretched out his hand at Snowy instead. No one knew what he was trying to convey. Snowy blinked, hesitated for a moment, and then withdrew more crystals and pushed it toward him. The headless man stood there for quite some time. In the end, he turned around and left. Snowy seemed visibly relieved from this, and then she went over to Xianxia. She was stunned when she saw Xianxia, and she immediately tossed the axe away and started crying while hugging him. Countless strands of spirit energy seeped out of her eyes. Xianxia rubbed her little head and spoke softly, I am fine. Don't cry. Snowy didn't listen to him and just kept rubbing her head against his chest. Xianxia felt quite helpless toward this. Meanwhile, Nanli Meng went over to his side, glanced at Snowy, and then gazed at Xianxia. How do you feel? Xianxia replied indifferently, I'll survive. Nanli Meng chuckled. As expected of primordial violet energy, such heavy injuries have actually been healed to such an extent in just this short amount of time. Xianxia ignored her and closed his eyes. Nanli Meng glanced at the surroundings and said, Based on my estimations, your full strength should possess the strength to break the limits of a world. As for that headless man, his cultivation is at the limit-breaker realm, at the very least it is now. However, he possesses the strength of two worlds. There's a difference in strength even amongst limit-breaker realm experts. Xianxia asked, How are they divided? Nanli Meng smiled. Limit-breaker realm experts possess the strength of a world, or to be more precise, they possess the strength to destroy a world. The strength of two worlds represents possessing the strength to destroy two worlds. Simply speaking, the limit-breaker realm is divided into 5 smaller realms: 1 world, 2 world, 3 world, 4 world, and 5 world. After the 5-world realm, it's a whole different world. There should be no experts above the 5-world realm in Eternal Border. These experts are either in the Eternal Dimension or dead in the Eternal River. Because attaining such strength represents that their lifespan is almost fully exhausted. Xianxia spoke solemnly. Can limit-breaker realm experts really destroy a world? Of course not. Nanli Meng smiled. Actually, it's exaggerated. For example, if any limit-breaker realm expert could destroy Eternal Border, then wouldn't it be too weak? The limit-breaker realm represents the ability to truly destroy the space of this world. For example, if you use your full strength, you can transform this entire area into a void without any matter, right? Xianxia thought for a moment and nodded. Nanli Meng nodded slightly. That's true destruction that makes a place unable to repair itself. As for the difference in strength amongst limit-breaker realm experts, let me make a comparison. A 1-world realm expert can instantly destroy everything in an area of 500 kilometers here, and a 2-world realm expert would be able to destroy everything in 1,500 kilometers. As for 3-world realm experts, they are even more terrifying. She glanced at Xianxia and continued, the Freedom Sect, Creation Sect, Immortality Sect, and Longevity Sect have limit-breaker realm experts, and they are being managed by 1-world realm experts. As for the experts of their sects, the 2-world realm experts, they've gone to the Eternal River. Only 2-world realm experts have the right to enter the Eternal River, while 1-world realm experts don't. Xianxia fell silent for a long time before he gazed at her. How strong was Xianxia? Nanli Meng fell silent. Xianxia gazed at her. He knew that she knew a lot. A long time passed before she gazed at Xianxia. You really want to know? Xianxia nodded. Please, she replied softly. Her true strength surpasses the 2-world realm. Perhaps she's at the 3-world realm or even higher. She shook her head at this point. Perhaps you're unaware, but she has always been suppressing her cultivation. Suppressing her cultivation. Xianxia slowly clenched his fists. Why? She laughed bitterly. Because she's really very strong. Xianxia replied. I don't understand. Nanli Meng said. Metal must be tempered thousands of times, and only then can it be made into a sharp sword. Tell me, if a sword couldn't endure the pain and loneliness, and it left the furnace in advance, then what would happen? Yang Yi fell silent. Nanli Meng continued. She's using her body as a furnace to make herself into a peerless sword. She's like a volcano. The longer it accumulates and remains suppressed, the more terrifying it would be when it erupts. Actually, I investigated her intentionally, and if it wasn't because of the Void Spirit race, she would have been renowned a long time ago. She was actually very well known all those years ago too. Unfortunately, she vanished in the end, causing her to be gradually forgotten by the experts of all the worlds, including Eternal Border. She paused for a moment and continued. The patriarch of the undying race is amazing as well. Just like her, he was tied down by his own race. Otherwise, Yang Yi suddenly started laughing. As he laughed and laughed, 2 rows of tears gradually flowed down his face. She was alive. Based on what Nanli Meng told him, he knew that Tian Xiu was alive. The invincible Tian Xiu was alive. Nanli Meng gazed at Yang Yi, who was lying on the ground, and said, "She is alive, but she has left Eternal Border. She can deal with those powers of Eternal Border for you, but she won't. Do you know why?" Yang Yi gazed at her. "To temper me? Not at all." Nanli Meng walked over to Yang Yi. "She thinks very highly of you. Very, very highly. However, she'll go further and further in the future. She'll go very far, and she hopes that you exist on her future path. The path of the strong is always one that is threaded alone. It isn't one that someone clears out for you. You must thread your own path. She won't clear it out for you. She detonated Netherworld Destiny to tell you that you must walk on your own path, and you must rely on yourself for everything. Backing will die and fall. Understand?" Yang Yi closed his eyes slowly. In his mind, it was the figure of that petite little girl who looked down upon the world. Meanwhile, Snowy, who was lying on Yang Ye's chest, suddenly rubbed her eyes and gazed at Nanli Meng, and then she pointed at herself. Obviously, she was asking if Tian Xiu had anything to say to her. Nanli Meng glanced at Snowy and said, "In my records, there are 10 formidable physiques, and anyone who possesses one of them will become an extraordinary overlord who goes down in history. Now I have to add a new one. Do you know what it is?" Snowy blinked. Obviously, she was asking what it was. Nanli Meng gazed at Snowy and spoke seriously. "The invincible cute body. It's more special than any other physique. She doesn't need to fight because countless experts would be willing to fight for her. All things, people, sprites, and practically everything else must give her some face. She's the only existence in the world who does not fear tribulations of destiny because they do not work on her. And she's the only existence who does not fear karma because there's only good karma for her. In any case, she's absolutely invincible." Yang Yi was stunned speechless. Snowy blinked and gazed at Yang Yi. She didn't quite understand Nanli Meng. Yang Yi rubbed her little head. "In any case, you're really amazing." Snowy cracked a smile, and then she rubbed her head against Yang Ye's chin. Nanli Meng shook her head and sighed. "The sprite progenitor shouldn't be like this." Yang Yi suddenly gazed at her. "What are those 10 great physiques you spoke of?" She replied, "You know your lover, and Nanjing?" Yang Yi nodded. "What about her?" Nanli Meng replied, "She possesses one of them, the martial god physique. In theory, she's the most terrifying. And Nanjing?" Yang Yi took a deep breath and asked, "Do you know where she is? I'll give you a divine treasure in exchange." She shook her head. "I would like to know. Unfortunately, no one knows where she is right now. I paid a good amount of money to deduce her whereabouts. But do you know what happened? That 2-world realm expert almost died from the backlash." "What do you mean?" Yang Yi frowned. She explained, "I mean, she's being concealed from the heavens, and the person doing that is very, very strong. Extremely strong." Yang Ye's frown deepened. "You don't have to worry about her." Nanli Meng spoke indifferently. "Based on her natural talent, experts will be fighting over her like she's a treasure no matter where she goes. You're better off worrying about yourself." Yang Yi thought for a moment, and it didn't take long for him to come to an understanding. Just as she'd said, instead of worrying about a Nanjing, he should be worried about himself. And Nanjing had both strength and luck that were definitely better than him. Moreover, she would be even better off while not by his side. Staying with him came with a huge pile of trouble. Yang Yi restrained his thoughts and gazed at Nanli Meng. One last question. What physique do I possess? Or perhaps is my physique part of those 10 physiques? She glanced at him. No, but if there are 10 lousiest physiques, then you will definitely be at the top. Right, the misfortune physique. Misfortune and death follows wherever you go. Yang Yi was at a loss for words. A short while later, Yang Yi returned to the primordial pagoda to heal. He was only fully healed after staying in the primordial pagoda for a few days, but only a few hours had passed in the world outside. They continued forward. Yang Yi and Nanli Feng went through the mountains. Behind them was a gorge that stretched for over 300 m wide and was bottomless. When they looked up, all they could see was a corner of the sky. They hadn't gone far when Yang Yi suddenly stopped, and Nanli Meng gazed at him with bewilderment. What is it? Yang Yi didn't answer her. He looked ahead, and there was an old man in linen clothes there. The old man had a small bamboo chest on his back and a bamboo in his right hand. At the top of the bamboo was a white piece of cloth, and on the cloth was 2 pitch-black characters. Fairness. The old man walked swiftly in Yang Yi and Nanli Meng's direction, and he muttered as he walked, "Strange, how strange. Such an expert in the sword Tao appeared in a tiny place like Eternal Border. It shouldn't be, it shouldn't." It didn't take long for him to arrive before Yang Yi and Nanli Meng. Right when he was about to pass by, the old man stopped abruptly and gazed at Yang Yi. "You can see me?" Meanwhile, Snowy gazed at the bamboo chest the old man carried, and her eyes were spinning about. No one knew what she was thinking. However, a chill ran down Yang Ye's spine. "Favorite," the old man asked again. "You can see me?" Yang Yi grinned. "Senior, are you joking?" He gazed at Nanli Meng and said, "You can't see him?" Nanli Meng looked before Yang Yi, but it was empty there. She gazed at him and frowned. She felt a little unhappy. After all, she felt that Yang Yi was playing some sort of tricks. However, when she saw Snowy's gaze, her expression finally changed. Snowy's gaze told her that there was someone there, but she couldn't see the person. A two-world realm expert like her couldn't see the person. Suddenly, the old man's gaze descended onto Snowy, and then his eyes lit up. Isn't this a sprite progenitor? Not yet, but soon. Strange, truly strange. I actually encountered a sprite progenitor here. Tisk. Snowy blinked. While she was looking at the old man, her gaze frequently shot toward the small bamboo chest behind him. Meanwhile, the old man gazed at Yang Yi, sized him up, and said, "Besides that sword sheath and the eternal energy seed within you, there's nothing to my liking that you possess. Right, this little fellow is very good. Are you willing to sell her?" Yang Yi hurriedly shook his head. What a joke! How could he possibly sell Snowy? At the same time, he became slightly vigilant. The old man was too mysterious. The old man grinned and glanced at Yang Yi. He hesitated for a moment and said, "I have a few treasures that are perfect for you. Do you want to buy them?" Yang Yi hadn't even said anything when Snowy hurriedly nodded, and then she gazed at the old man so that he would hurry up and reveal them. The old man glanced at Snowy and put down the bamboo chest. He withdrew a small sword from within it. It was just palm-sized and completely pitch-black. Based on its outward appearance, there was nothing special about it. But Snowy's eyes had lit up. The old man said, "This sword is called the Myriad Law Sword. Don't underestimate it for its size. It contains a myriad of laws, including the laws of the Heaven Tao from Eternal Dimension. As for its might, I'm not exaggerating when I say only 2 swords in these myriads of universes can compete with it." Yang Yi unconsciously asked, "Which 2? The old man replied, "One is called Executor. Its strength reigns supreme over the ages, and even destiny fears it. Unfortunately, it had to sigh. Its soul was shattered, and even its spirit was forcefully wiped out. Now, even I don't know where it is, and I can only wonder how much its soul and spirit have recovered." Executor. Xianxia's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. Isn't that the number one sword of the eternal dimension? Xianxia thought for a moment and asked, what about the other sword? The old man glanced at Xianxia and smiled. Do you know what sword has been the strongest since the ancient times? Xianxia shook his head. The old man smiled. The ordinary sword. Xianxia was puzzled. Huh. The old man smiled. No matter what sword it is, if its owner isn't strong, it is just a sword. But if its owner is strong, then even an ordinary sword can kill emperors and annihilate gods. He couldn't help but look back at this point, and he said, that sword is already showing signs of becoming an ordinary sword. Xianxia glanced behind the old man and asked, what sword? The old man shook his head. It's nothing. Fellow Taoist, will you buy this sword? Xianxia thought for a moment and asked, what's the price? The old man grinned. You have 3 ways to obtain it. Firstly, that sheath and eternal energy within you. Secondly, that little fellow of yours. His gaze descended onto Snowy at this point. Meanwhile, Snowy's gaze was on the bamboo chest. Xianxia glanced at the old man and said, what about the third? The old man withdrew his gaze and looked at Xianxia. The third is a strand of your soul. A strand of his soul. Xianxia shook his head and smiled. Forget it. The old man sighed softly. Fellow Taoist, allow me to be honest. Your soul really isn't worth much. I'm being absolutely honest when I saw that this is quite a losing deal for me. However, out of consideration that you're able to make a sprite progenitor willingly stay by your side. That's the only reason I'm willing to make this bet. I'm being serious. I'm prepared to lose my investment. Xianxia smiled and said, as you said, the best sword in the world is an ordinary sword, and I think that makes a lot of sense. If a sword cultivator is strong, then even a branch can kill gods. The old man glanced at him and said, the ordinary sword isn't so easily accomplished. Even I can't explain everything about it. However, since you refuse to buy it, I won't force you. He put the sword back into the small bamboo chest. Meanwhile, Snowy blinked while slowly clenching her paws. The old man glanced at Nanli Meng, who had a solemn expression on her face. He was about to move his gaze away when he suddenly glanced at the thick scroll in her grasp. Interesting. He sized up Nanli Meng again. She has quite great aspirations, and her path is very special too. It's very interesting. Pass her a message from me. Don't try to force anything, for forcing something is obsession, and obsession comes in shades of both good and bad. A single hindered thought may destroy everything. He was about to leave once he finished speaking. Suddenly, Snowy placed her paw on the small bamboo chest. The old man gazed at Snowy. What are you doing? Snowy blinked and cracked a smile. She patted the small bamboo chest, and then it instantly trembled as if something wanted to escape from it. Snowy blinked swiftly a few times, and then spat out a mouthful of pure spirit energy. A short while later, it started trembling even more violently. The old man's expression changed, and he shot far backward. He gazed vigilantly at Snowy. Little fellow, what are you trying to do? Snowy blinked, pointed at it, and then pointed at herself. She wanted the bamboo chest. She wanted it. Xianxia was at a loss for words. The old man had a weird expression on his face. It's mine. Snowy glanced at it, pointed at the bamboo chest, and then pointed at herself and the old man. Obviously, she was telling the old man to let it choose. Choose my ass. The old man jumped with rage. Why don't you take out your treasures and let them choose? The old man's expression immediately changed drastically when he said that, and he was about to flee. However, Snowy had hurriedly withdrawn the sword sheath and primordial axe of creation. She placed them before the old man, and then pointed at the old man before pointing at herself. Obviously, she was telling them to choose. Xianxia really wanted to laugh. Isn't that cheating? Sure enough, both of them didn't hesitate to choose Snowy. Snowy grinned, put them away, and then gazed at the old man to display that it was his turn. The old man suddenly slapped himself on the forehead and spoke with dejection. What a mistake! What a foolish mistake! Very few in the world knew what the old man's Tao was. But those who'd come into contact with him knew that he attached great importance to fairness. Very great importance indeed. When he made trades with people, it was a one-for-one exchange. Even if he had the strength to take it by force, he wouldn't if the other party was unwilling. Fairness. Because of what he'd said, Snowy had very fairly withdrawn her treasures, and they'd chosen her. Now it was his turn. Actually, nothing would have happened if he'd immediately left once Snowy touched the bamboo chest. But he hadn't, and that was what he regretted the most. Leave now? It was too late. Snowy stared at the old man, causing a chill to run down his spine. Actually, he'd been very vigilant against Snowy, and so he'd isolated everything within the bamboo chest from being able to sense her. However, once she touched it, all of that was useless. The old man was very conflicted, extremely conflicted. Reveal his treasures? He knew what the outcome would be. A sprite progenitor was too attractive, but if he didn't reveal them, it would go against his heart. After all, Snowy had done so fairly. A short while later, the old man sighed. Fairness. I think everything in this world should follow that. The world would be at peace if both the strong and the weak followed it. He withdrew a white jade bottle and an earthen yellow scroll from the bamboo chest. As soon as they appeared, they flew over to Snowy, and Snowy grabbed them in her arms while cracking a smile. But just a short while later, she restrained her smile and placed them within the primordial pagoda. After that, she gazed at the bamboo chest behind the old man. When he saw this, Xianxia knew that the bamboo chest was the true treasure. The old man's lips twitched when he noticed Snowy's gaze. He shook his head and gazed at Xianxia. Within that bottle is divine dew. Actually, it's the blood and soul of an expert. Let me put it like this, if you allow that sword and saber of slaughter within you to absorb it, their quality will instantly rise a level higher. However, the blood of a god is too strong, so if it enters that sword of slaughter, its spirit will be eliminated. So decide for yourself. Besides that, it has many other uses. For example, it can improve your body. His blood is much, much better than the blood of a true dragon. No matter how strong you grow, that blood will still be an absolute treasure to you for the next 10 years. He paused for a moment and continued. As for that scroll, it's called the Myriad World Diagram. An almighty expert once condensed a myriad of worlds within it. Actually, it's just a map, but it's no ordinary map. In any case, no matter where you wish to go, you go get there with a swish by using it. Of course, it's best if you don't go to some places. Besides that, it has another function, and it's world locking. When you engage someone in battle and don't want that person to escape, you can use this diagram to lock the person within your diagram. It's more than enough to trap a 4-world realm expert. Of course, the precondition is that you can defeat such an expert. He sighed softly at this point. I've really made a huge loss today. He turned around and walked away. Suddenly, Snowy obstructed his path, pointed at herself, and pointed at the small bamboo chest. The bamboo chest was trembling incessantly behind the old man. The old man stomped his right foot down. Seriously, why did I have to encounter a bandit like you? Ugh! He patted the bamboo chest, and then 2 green fruits appeared before Snowy. Here, take it. It's free. My lord, you're my great lord. Stop tempting those little fellows. See you again. No, I hope we never see each other again. The old man vanished into thin air.